It took DeMarcus Cousins 357 days to recover from his Achilles injury, but it only took 284 days for a 9-time NBA All-Star to make the same recovery. His name stands above all as the player to emulate when recovering from an Achilles tear. Enter Dominique Wilkins. 2-time slam dunk champion, an NBA scoring champion, and perhaps the only player ever to return with star power after his Achilles tear. And his story is one we should all remember, especially KD.
Last night's game was the third the Hawks have played without Dominique Wilkins. Wilkins, of course, tore his Achilles tendon on Tuesday night against the Sixers. He had surgery on Thursday, and obviously he's lost for the season.
The 2019 NBA Finals handed the world of sports an injury that has already been deemed by some as the most consequential injury in the history of the NBA. Kevin Durant ended up losing much more than his season. He may never be the same again. Let's just say that even the biggest optimist in the world would call it very unlikely. The ruptured Achilles, an injury that's become the bane of the league in recent years. From DeMarcus Cousins to Kobe Bryant to John Wall to now Kevin Durant, one can argue that nothing has changed the league more this decade. Let's dive into it. In the formative years of the NBA, Achilles injuries were an afterthought compared to knee injuries, at least until November 27, 1970. That was the day that Elgin Baylor, just 6 months removed from leading the Lakers to his 4th NBA Finals loss, tore his Achilles tendon. He missed the rest of the year, returned the next fall, and played in just 9 games before retiring. Just a month earlier, an all-star by the name of Bob Rule, a then 26-year-old who started off the year with a 3-game stretch averaging 32 points and 14 rebounds, suffered the same injury in his own right. Rule was never the same again, only starting for 1 season after that. He was out of the league by age 30. It's actually remarkable, considering all the high-profile injuries as far back as 50 years ago, how little progression there's been in treating Achilles injuries. Back injuries, broken bones, and torn ACLs are far from career-ending injuries now. So why haven't we cracked the Achilles tear? Well, the Achilles is the thickest, strongest tendon in the human body, and unlike other common sports injuries, there's a lot that can go wrong after the surgery. Even when the tear is repaired, the tendon can erratically elongate, which can forever change a player's range of motion, power, and demand follow-up surgeries. Doctors can do a lot, but they can't control how your muscles recover, and that lack of control translates. The American Journal of Sports Medicine found that from 1988 to 2011, 39% of players never played again after suffering a torn Achilles. One of those players was Isiah Thomas. Now, Thomas was already past his prime when it happened. Although he was just 32, he'd actually already announced he was retiring at year's end. And that wasn't very far away at all. In his last game, in front of his home crowd, Thomas drove to the basket and felt what he thought was a kick to the back of his leg. He pulled up short, clutching his ankle, and that was it for him. End of his career. Which brings us to another notable case. And in fact, another notable farewell season. Kobe Bryant's torn Achilles shook the world as much, perhaps even more, than Durant's finals moment. It's a shame with Kobe, because we never truly got to see him recover from the Achilles. He suffered a knee injury just a week into his return. It was incredible that he had any gas left in the tank after those injuries. He serviced the Lakers with a few flashes of brilliance till he dropped the mic in his farewell. Dominique didn't have a fairy tale ending like Kobe, but he did have a better post-Achilles career. First off, it should be noted that he was an outlier from the start. Healing enough in 7 months to be able to play full contact from the start of training camp after suffering the injury in February? That's ridiculous. I mean, did he work out a deal with Mother Nature? But also, Neek never did truly gain his athleticism back. The reason why he thrived after recovering comes down to one word: adaptability. Wilkins had to put in a ton of work to get back to competing at the highest level. He had to abandon his high-flying human highlight film stunts and limited his isolation plays. Instead, he became one of the best post-up triple threats in the league, as well as featuring an improved jumper, as he went from below 30% from behind the arc for his career to at the time a respectable 34% after the injury. And despite the fact that he lost his finishing ability and became an average defender at best, those changes to his game allowed him to come back and average nearly 30 points per game on a playoff team with the best efficiency of his career. Again, he did this 1 season after an Achilles tear. He placed 5th in MVP voting that year, above Karl Malone, Shaquille O'Neal, David Robinson, and Clyde Drexler. And while he did eventually succumb to the combination of age and the aftermath of his injury, Neek still managed to be a valuable sixth man 5 years later at age 37. But don't get me wrong, the chances that Kevin Durant will do as well as Wilkins are indeed very slim. After all, he's the only success story out of dozens who failed. And even his success, as far as maintaining play at a similar level as pre-injury, was relatively short-lived. In fact, the first season back from an Achilles tear is the best season most players can hope for, period. Meaning even if KD returned for the 2020-2021 season in all-star form, he likely declines from there. There's a good chance that the 2019 playoffs were an abrupt end to Durant's prime. It's nearly hopeless. Keyword, nearly. Maybe there's a chance we haven't seen the last of a superstar, Kevin Durant.